Around 3200 BCE, the Sumerians made a breakthrough that would transform civilization, the invention of writing. Using a sharpened reed called a stylus, they pressed wedge-shaped symbols into soft clay tablets, creating what we now call cuneiform. At first, writing served practical needs. Scribes tracked grain harvests, livestock totals, labor hours, and temple offerings. Tokens and pictographs evolved into standardized signs. As city life grew more complex, so did the writing system. Over time, cuneiform expanded to record contracts, legal codes, tax ledgers, rituals, royal decrees, and even stories. These tablets weren't just scribbled and discarded. Many were sun-dried or baked, stored in temple libraries, palace archives, or personal collections. Thousands survive today fragile, yet immortal. Through cuneiform, Sumerians built a written memory, a way to preserve knowledge beyond a single generation. In clay, they captured the foundations of economics, governance, and belief. Their words etched in earth still speak across 5,000 years. What began as numbers and names became history, myth, and identity, all born from the press of a stylus on wet clay. In ancient Sumer, the ability to write was a rare and powerful skill. Scribes, the professional writers of the ancient world, were part of an elite class, trained from childhood in edubbas, or scribal schools. There, they spent years mastering the complex system of cuneiform, which eventually grew to include hundreds of signs for sounds, words, and ideas. Training was intense and disciplined. Students copied tablet after tablet, memorizing symbols and perfecting the stylus stroke. Lessons included not only writing, but mathematics, accounting, and religious texts. Those who graduated became the record keepers of the gods and kings. Scribes filled the temples, courts, palaces, and markets. They managed inventories, tax ledgers, legal documents, contracts, hymns, rituals, and royal proclamations. Without scribes, there could be no administration, no law, no preserved history. To write was to give memory shape, to capture voice, law, myth, and authority in clay. In a world ruled by gods and kings, the scribe stood quietly between theme invisible but essential, holding civilization together with the tip of a reed stylus. Once reserved for counting and command, Sumerian writing grew into something richer, a vessel for poetry, prayer, and storytelling. Cuneiform gave shape to the deepest thoughts of the ancient world, hymns to gods, laments for cities, proverbs of wisdom, and heroic tales etched in clay. Among these works is the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest surviving heroic narrative. It follows a powerful king on a journey through grief, wilderness, and the search for immortality. Within its lines are echoes of friendship, loss, divine wrath, and human vulnerability. The Sumerians also wrote creation myths, explaining how the gods formed the heavens, the earth, and humanity's role between them. Other texts describe the afterlife, painting haunting visions of the shadowy underworld. These stories blended theological belief with cultural identity, passed down through temple schools and recitation. Through these texts, we glimpse a world that wrestled with purpose, fate, and the gods above. In the clay voices of Sumer, we find the earliest attempts to understand what it means to be human and to remember it. In the bustling cities of Sumer, numbers were not abstract, they were essential. To manage trade, farming, construction, and worship, the Sumerians developed one of history's most influential tools: mathematics. Their system was based on 60, not 10. Known as sexagesimal, this base 60 math gave us lasting concepts like 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 360 degrees in a circle. These weren't just useful, they were elegant, divisible, and practical for calculating time, land, and astronomical cycles. Scribes created multiplication tables, practiced division, and developed early geometry to measure fields and build canals. They calculated areas, volumes, and angles with surprising precision. In temple schools, students copied rows of math problems, just as they practiced writing words. This mathematical system would endure long after Sumer itself disappeared, adopted by Babylonian astronomers, influencing Greek geometry and ultimately shaping modern science. From clay tablets and styluses came the numbers that structured space and time. The Sumerians didn't just count, they measured the universe, one line, one angle, 1/60 at a time. For the Sumerians, the night sky was more than mystery. It was a clock, a calendar, and a message from the gods. From temple rooftops and ziggurat towers, priests and scribes watched the stars, charting their movement to guide both earthly tasks and divine rituals. They tracked the phases of the moon, creating a lunar calendar with 12 months based on the new moon's cycle. This calendar regulated agriculture, signaling when to plant and harvest, and it aligned with a rhythm of religious festivals, offerings, and ceremonies. Over time, they observed planetary paths, constellations, and eclipses, noting their patterns in clay. These were not just scientific observations, they were signs of divine will. Celestial cycles were tied to deities and destiny, shaping political and spiritual decisions. By linking sky to earth, the Sumerians brought order to the chaos of time. Their astronomical records laid the groundwork for Babylonian star charts, Greek cosmology, and modern calendars. In watching the heavens, they sought not only knowledge but meaning. Their skies were filled with gods, and their nights with numbers. In Sumer, time itself was sacred. While Sumerians charted stars and recorded myths, they also applied knowledge to daily survival. In fields and clinics, their wisdom shaped two of the most vital sciences, agriculture and medicine. To feed growing cities, they refined irrigation planning, using levees, canals, and gates to direct water efficiently. They developed crop rotation to preserve soil fertility and improve the plow, increasing food production. Farming was no longer guesswork, it was systematized, studied, and inscribed in clay. Equally advanced was their approach to healing. Sumerian tablets describe over 200 medicinal recipes, blending herbs, minerals, and ritual incantations. Diagnoses were based on symptoms, dreams, and omens. Healers, part priest, part herbalist, recorded treatments for wounds, fevers, and even mental illness. These writings form the roots of early pharmacology, diagnosis, and holistic care. While their medicine was spiritual as much as physical, it represented a key step in humanity's understanding of the body. For the Sumerians, to write was to preserve life in field or temple, on battlefield or sickbed. Their science was not just for the gods, it was for the people. As cities grew and society became more complex, Sumerians turned to writing not just to count goods but to define justice. Law was no longer passed by. Word of mouth, it was pressed into clay. Some of the world's earliest legal codes appeared in Sumer, centuries before Hammurabi. One of the most famous is the Code of Ur-Nammu, written around 2100 BCE. It laid out laws covering contracts, marriage, inheritance, property rights, and punishments. These codes helped resolve disputes, protect citizens, and uphold royal authority. Legal decisions were recorded by scribes in temple courts. These texts show not only rules, but moral principles about fairness, responsibility, and civic duty. Punishments were often proportional: a fine for a stolen sheep, restitution for a damaged field. The goal was to restore balance, not simply to punish. Law in Sumer was seen as sacred, granted by the gods and enforced by kings. Tablets of judgment were stored in archives, consulted for future rulings. Through these early laws, the Sumerians laid the groundwork for legal ethics, procedural justice, and the belief that society must be governed by written order, not personal power. In Sumer, knowledge was sacred and it had a home. From the heart of each city, edubbas, or scribal schools, trained the next generation of thinkers. Here, young boys spent years copying texts, memorizing signs, and studying law, math, and literature. These were the first structured schools in history, where education became a system, not a privilege. As knowledge expanded, it needed to be stored. Within temples and palaces, the Sumerians created the world's first libraries, archives filled with thousands of clay tablets. Stored in reed baskets or stacked on shelves, these collections preserved contracts, hymns, myths, legal codes, astronomical data, and more. These libraries were more than storerooms, they were symbols of authority. Only the literate elite could access them, and through them, control time, memory, and administration. Knowledge became a tool of both governance and religion, a bridge between gods and men, between the past and the future. Even as cities rose and fell, these tablets endured. The words they held etched in clay and sealed in silence carried the voice of a civilization. In Sumer, the written word was not just preserved, it was protected,